Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and once again it's time for the Q&A, so let's go ahead and get this started. All right, first question. Are body fat calculators on scales accurate? My body fat is coming in at 32%. I'm 211 pounds body weight, and my abs are visible in the morning with quite a bit of muscle in my frame. And by looking at me, I can say that I'm 100% below 20% body fat. All right, brother. This is the sort of stuff that, I take for granted. And I need to understand there are a lot of people who are new to a lot of these things. Bioimpedance scales not only do not work, I have never heard of a single expert anywhere ever that thinks they're based on any sort of real science. In other words, the only people who think that these things work are the people who are selling them to you, like a salesman, the manufacturer. They're not even capable of working. They're not based upon anything even remotely reasonable. And what I mean is, you get on a bioimpedance scale, and it might show you at 30% body fat, and you could go drink 3 or 4 big glasses of water and come back in 15 minutes. And it will change your body fat percentage 5, 6, 7%. So you could drop to 23%, you could go up to 37%, like inside of 15 minutes just by drinking a bunch of water or eating a meal. It'll totally throw the scale off. In other words, they mean nothing. They're completely useless, completely worthless, and they're not based on anything at all. There's nothing to them. So if you're paying an extra 50 cents for a scale that has a bioimpedance on it over the model that doesn't, you wasted 50 cents. It's not a useful metric in any manner, so I wouldn't worry about it at all. All right, next question. Hey coach, I know you've said keto isn't for everyone, especially if you don't have the muscle to justify adequate protein while still in ketosis. Could you suggest how many grams, how much muscle you should have to justify this diet? Well, here's what you need to think about. We know that your muscle retention, muscle gains, everything else are going to be based largely upon protein intake more than anything else. In other words, if you are trying to cut and lose body fat on this sort of diet while maintaining all of your muscle, you probably want to be consuming at least a gram of protein per pound of body weight. And if you can't stay at least 60 to 70% fat calories while doing that, then that's problematic. And that's the difference between people who are doing some of these keto diets who don't have a base, just the general population, versus athletes who are doing them. What you usually find, and this is what a lot of people have noted who work with athletes who do this sort of thing, a lot of athletes can eat 300 or 400 grams of protein a day and not go out of ketosis. And they're still consuming most of their calories from fat. And that's where you need to understand the math on that. For example, let's take me. I mean, I have plenty of days where I hit 300 grams of protein right now on my keto diet, right? 300 grams. My maintenance is like 4,000 calories right now. So, 300 grams of protein is 1,200 calories. If I eat 3,500 calories, which would be a deficit, you see the problem there? I'm going to do the math real quick. Yeah, that's 35% protein calories. 35% protein calories if I did that. And that would be in a deficit. And meaning everything else would be fat. So it would be around 65% fat. So fat is still the dominant macronutrient in that case. So that's what I'm talking about with various athletes. And there are guys out there who I know of who go up to 400, 500 grams of protein a day, consuming at least 50% fat calories, who still, if they do a keto stick or anything else, they're still showing in ketosis. But these are people with very, very high energy turnovers, right? And so that's the difference. Whereas in a lot of the general population people, they might have to drop their protein down to 100 grams in order to stay in ketosis. Well, in that case, yeah, they're doing a ketogenic diet, but that's also probably not ideal from a body composition perspective. If you're talking about gaining muscle, retaining muscle, things like that. So when I'm talking about that for people who want to lift, you need to have enough of a muscle base and enough of an energy turnover that you can run relatively high calories so that you can still get the majority of your calories from fat while still consuming large amounts of protein. And that's the difference there of what I'm talking about keto for more athletic people who have a base already versus people who are just wanting to lose a little bit of body fat doing this. They're two totally different animals. Totally different animals. And like me, I don't consume less than 250 grams of protein a day on my current keto diet, which makes it mine a very high protein diet, right? But I still consume at least 60% fat calories every day. All right, next question. I know you've said once you can rep 225 on bench, you're no longer a novice. When I was doing 5 sets of 5 pause bench of 225, and only a week of peaking, I was able to bench 300 touch and go. Why is this? I can now do 250 for 5 to 6 reps paused and can bench 310 with a long pause. Is this because of the genetics or my rep work doesn't match my max? What's going on here? Well, I don't think you're understanding how big of a difference touch and go versus pause can be. In other words, when your bench was 310 touch and go or 300 touch and go, that means that your pause bench could have been as low as 250 or 260 in a worst case. And I'm not saying that that's really common to get 50 pounds out of a touch and go, but it does happen. I'm not saying it happens for most lifters, but I have certainly met, I don't know, a dozen guys in my life who get 50 pounds out of touch and go versus pause. And if you're bouncing, because again, you're touch and go and you're more novice like that, what you're thinking is just a touch and go could be a bounce, right? I've seen guys get 70, 80 pounds out of a bounce. So go back and look at your numbers again. What do we have? You've got 225 for a 5x5. That means that's probably your 7 rep max, maybe, if you can do 5 sets of 5 with it, versus a 5 to 6 rep max with 25 pounds heavier. So really what you're saying is your bench has gone up 20 pounds on your rep work. Well, if you're getting 10 pounds out of your touch and go, you have an exact proportion, right? Because those are 20 pounds apart. Meaning if your pause bench was around 290 with 300 touch and go, you gain 20 pounds. You gain 20 pounds on the rep work, 20 pounds on the pause bench for their max. What's the difference? They're almost exactly the same. But that is the problem, is that you didn't do an apples to apples comparison. You did an apples to oranges comparison. And unless you personally back then tested your pause bench, you don't know what your pause bench is, because you don't know, unless you've actually tested them, how much you're getting out of the touch and go versus your pause bench on a 1 rep max. Because what it is on your rep work is not going to be the same as it is on your max always. Again, because we're talking about technical differences here, right? We're talking about technical differences on an exercise like that. So again, without you having tested it, you don't actually know what your pause bench was. You know what your touch and go was back then versus your pause bench now. But your pause bench is still 10 pounds heavier than your touch and go was back then. So it's fair to say that you have gotten significantly stronger with that 20 to 25 pound increase on your rep work. All right, so hopefully that clarifies it for you. All right, next question. Hey, Jason, I'm currently running my second novice linear progression because of time away from the gym. So using LP for the fast progress it gives, and so far so good. What's your thoughts on light running on off days interfering with recovery? I do the starting strength type stuff, squat, press, dead, alternative to press with bench, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and I want to do some light jogging Tuesday, Thursday. Thanks, coach. Your second time. All right. So if you took time away from the gym and you detrained, your gains are going to come easier the second time around. People who run starting strength because it is so aggressive, if you start adding in conditioning work immediately and you don't have any conditioning, yes, it will interfere. If you're someone who's already been doing conditioning and you already have the work capacity or you do a sport already, you won't see any negatives. All right, it's because you're adding 2 new training stimuluses at once. Now, in the case of someone who's detrained, which is what has happened for you, you took some time away from the gym, you're going to regain a lot of that off of muscle memory. And I would say that if you're doing general physical preparedness or conditioning work on a couple of your off days, you're probably not going to see the same negative effects because you're just regaining old size and strength that you previously gained before. I think you're going to find it isn't going to have the negative effects that you think, unless you are coming back to the cardio completely out of shape. Completely out of shape. In which case you better ease back into it gradually. But that's fine. Go ahead, ease back into it gradually and regain what you did off the muscle memory and balance it all out. All right, guys, so that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys in part 2.